The clock above the grand stage at the Olympus Hall ticked relentlessly, each second a hammer blow against the silence. 2 minutes and 15 seconds. That's all that remained. Keisha O'Connell, her apron still cinched tight from her evening shift, stared at the sprawling equations on the colossal whiteboard. Her marker, a silent witness to her mental acrobatics, was poised mid-air. The problem she'd been confidently dismantling for the past hour wasn't just difficult. It was designed to be impossible. Dr. Eris Thorne's calm, authoritative voice echoed in her mind. No human has ever solved this manually. Around her, the world's most esteemed mathematicians had already conceded defeat. Dr. Julian Vance from Cambridge shook his head, a grim line etched on his face. If it requires quantum computing, there's no point. Dr. Anya Sharma from Oxford closed her notebook with a sigh of resignation. Even Professor Ben Carter from Caltech, who had championed Keisha's unconventional approaches, stepped away from his board, his shoulders slumped. But the worst blow wasn't the despair of her peers. It was the crushing weight of the world's rapidly shifting sentiment. Social media, a roaring beast just moments ago, had transformed from fervent curiosity to quiet pity. Hashtag set to fail. Hashtag Hartwell. Planned it. Impossible. Problem. The hashtags blazed across screens worldwide. No one could solve an impossible problem. 3 minutes and 40 seconds, ticking down to zero. How do you find a solution when the problem itself is declared beyond human capacity, even with the most advanced computational aid? Keisha's eyes swept across her meticulous work on the whiteboard. Every calculation, every elegant connection she'd found between number theory, topology, and convergence analysis suddenly felt meaningless. If the problem demanded technology she didn't possess, then her insights, her intuition, her very being as a mathematician were worthless. The Olympus Hall, a cathedral of intellect, just an hour prior, was now silent with a pervasive sympathy. 700 million people watched her inevitable failure, their collective pity a suffocating blanket. Dr. Thorne approached gently, his voice a low, kind murmur. Miss O'Connell, given this new information about the problem's classification, no one would fault you for stepping away. What you've accomplished tonight is already remarkable. Keisha looked at him, then at the sea of expectant faces. In her mind's eye, she saw her former manager, Jean-Luc, from the opulent restaurant, Le Jardin, smirking on a video call, probably telling reporters he'd known she was delusional all along. She pictured Alistair Thorne's lawyers, the very architect of this twisted game, furiously working their phones, undoubtedly preparing damage control statements about how their client had bravely protected the integrity of mathematics from fraudulent claims. But worst of all, she saw the disappointment in the eyes of those who had believed in her. The tired night shift workers who'd paused their mundane tasks to watch. The single parents who'd seen a reflection of their own struggles in her fight. The countless students who'd been told they weren't smart enough, who'd invested their fragile hopes in her impossible dream. And now, she was about to let them all down. "I can't do it," she whispered, her voice barely audible, choked with unshed tears. "I thought I could see the solution. But if it's impossible..." Her confidence, forged over years of rigorous mathematical study and honed by innate intuition, crumbled into dust. She was just a waitress after all, foolish enough to believe she could compete with billionaires and PhDs. The humiliation burned through her chest, a bitter, searing acid. Alistair Thorne, sensing his moment of absolute triumph, stepped forward, his voice cutting through the despair like a razor. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when delusion meets reality. Miss O'Connell has been living in a fantasy where serving coffee qualifies her to solve problems that stump the world's finest minds." The cruelty in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just about mathematics anymore. It was about putting her back in what he considered her proper, lowly place. But then, a voice, quiet but firm, sliced through the oppressive atmosphere. Keisha. Dr. Thorne's gaze met hers. He moved closer, speaking directly to her, not to the cameras. Mathematics doesn't care about classifications or committees or what's supposed to be impossible. You've seen something in this problem that others haven't. Trust your mind. Dr. Thorne gestured toward the whiteboard, his eyes alight with a renewed, almost desperate hope. Look at your work. Really, look at it. You haven't been solving 3 separate problems. You've been building something entirely new. Keisha, her vision blurred by tears of frustration, turned back to her equations. And slowly, agonizingly, she began to see it. Dr. Thorne was right. Her approach hadn't been to follow traditional mathematical pathways. She had, without conscious intent, been forging entirely new bridges between disciplines that were never meant to connect. Perhaps the problem wasn't that she lacked the right technology. Perhaps the problem was that everyone else, blinded by computational power, had been thinking about it all wrong. 2 minutes and 15 seconds remained. Could she find the courage to attempt the impossible one more time? 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Keisha wiped her eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath, and turned back to the whiteboard with a ferocious, renewed purpose. Dr. Thorne was right. She hadn't been solving 3 separate problems. She had been constructing something that had never existed before. The celestial bridge paradox, as Hartwell had christened it, wasn't about finding a single solution. It was about creating a mathematical language, a framework, that could describe the very fabric of infinity itself. "I see it now," she whispered, her voice growing stronger, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her doubt. Her marker, once trembling, moved across the board with fluid confidence as her mathematical intuition took complete, exhilarating control. While Alistair Thorne and his elite team had spent 3 years using quantum supercomputers to brute force their way through calculations, Keisha had been unconsciously developing something far more elegant, more profound. She wasn't computing the solution. She was discovering it, like an explorer charting an unknown continent. The first bridge she'd constructed seamlessly connected number theory to topology. Where traditional mathematics saw infinite sequences as discrete, separate entities, Keisha, with breathtaking clarity, recognized them as points on a continuous, flowing surface. Her hand moved rapidly, sketching complex mathematical curves and symbols that demonstrated how infinite series could be mapped onto geometric shapes, revealing hidden connections. "She's treating infinity like a landscape," Professor Ben Carter from Caltech whispered in amazement into his microphone, his voice resonating through the hushed hall. "Not a mathematical concept, but a physical space you can navigate, a terrain with its own rules and pathways." Dr. Vance from Cambridge, who had openly expressed his skepticism just moments before, now gripped the edge of his table, his eyes wide with a dawning realization. It's a living structure. The second bridge linked topology to convergence analysis. Here, Keisha's approach became truly revolutionary, defying every established norm. Instead of trying to prove convergence through laborious limit calculations, she showed how mathematical functions could flow like dynamic rivers across the intricate topological surface she'd just created. The audience, even those without a shred of mathematical training, was mesmerized. Her visual approach made the abstract concrete, the seemingly impossible tangible. She was painting with numbers, her every stroke revealing a deeper truth. But Alistair Thorne, ever the master of disruption, wasn't finished. "This is mathematical poetry, not rigorous proof," he announced desperately, his voice laced with the first hint of panic. "She's drawing pretty pictures instead of providing numerical solutions." Keisha paused, her marker held aloft, and faced him directly. The moment had arrived for the first of her 3 golden beats. A poetic term Dr. Thorne had coined for the pivotal questions that would either validate or utterly shatter her work. "Your elegant solution has one small problem, Mr. Thorne," she said calmly, her voice carrying across the silent auditorium, now utterly captivated. "You assumed that infinity is always infinite." The statement hung in the air, a challenge, a paradox in itself. Thorne's face, usually a mask of smug certainty, showed confusion, then a flicker of genuine alarm as he began to grasp the profound implication of her words. "In your quantum-assisted proof, you treated all infinities as equivalent. But there are different kinds of infinity, Mr. Thorne. Some are countable, others uncountable. Some converge, others diverge. The bridge you missed is that they're all connected." 90 seconds remained. Keisha turned back to complete the third and most crucial bridge, the grand synthesis that unified all three mathematical disciplines into a single, breathtakingly elegant framework. Her marker flew across the board, connecting equations with geometric shapes, linking abstract concepts with vibrant visual representations. She was operating on pure, unadulterated mathematical instinct, her mind processing relationships that had never been formally described, let alone visualized. The solution wasn't emerging from calculation, it was being born from intuition. "Incredible," Dr. Thorne breathed, his former skepticism completely replaced by awe. "She's created a unified field theory for infinite sequences." The three PhD contestants, their own work long abandoned, were simply watching in stunned silence. Dr. Vance was frantically snapping photos of her work with his phone, his hand trembling slightly. Dr. Sharma was scribbling notes at lightning speed, desperately trying to follow Keisha's audacious logic. 30 seconds. Keisha stepped back, surveying her masterpiece. The entire massive whiteboard was covered, not with chaotic scribbles, but with equations, diagrams, and connections that formed a coherent, undeniably beautiful mathematical argument. It was the kind of mathematical beauty that reminded people why they'd fallen in love with numbers in the first place, why they sought pattern in the chaos of the universe. "There," she said simply, her voice clear and strong. "The celestial bridge paradox isn't a paradox at all. It's a map, showing how different types of infinity connect to each other." The countdown timer reached 0. A profound silence descended upon Olympus Hall, a silence so thick it felt like a physical presence. Dr. Eris Thorne approached the whiteboard, his tablet held aloft, running verification algorithms against Keisha's monumental work. The three PhD contestants, their earlier rivalry forgotten, crowded around, checking her logic step by step, their faces a mixture of wonder and disbelief. The cameras captured every equation, every connection, every audacious, elegant leap of mathematical reasoning. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Thorne spoke, his voice filled with a reverence Keisha had never heard before. "The mathematical reasoning is sound. Not only sound, but revolutionary. Miss O'Connell has created an entirely new approach to infinite series analysis." The auditorium erupted. A cacophony of applause, cheers, and shouts of disbelief filled the air. But Alistair Thorne, his face pale and drawn, wasn't ready to concede. "One professor's opinion doesn't constitute mathematical proof. I demand independent verification from multiple institutions." Dr. Thorne nodded, a subtle, knowing smile playing on his lips. "Of course, Mr. Thorne. I've already sent Miss O'Connell's work to Caltech, MIT, Princeton, Cambridge, and Oxford. Their response should arrive momentarily." The tension was unbearable, a palpable current running through the hall. 700 million people around the world held their breath, waiting for the mathematical establishment to render its verdict on a work created by a former waitress in less than 60 minutes. Dr. Thorne's tablet chimed, a notification slicing through the silence. He read the first one aloud, his voice resonating with barely contained excitement. "Caltech Mathematics Department. Miss O'Connell's approach represents a paradigm shift in infinite series theory. We recommend immediate publication in the Journal of Advanced Mathematical Innovation." Another chime. MIT confirms the mathematical validity and notes immediate applications to quantum field theory and advanced AI algorithms. Then Princeton, then Cambridge, then Oxford. Each message brought the same unequivocal verdict. Keisha O'Connell had not only solved the impossible, she had rewritten the rules. The moment arrived for the second golden beat. Keisha faced the cameras directly, her posture regal, her voice calm and powerful, imbued with the quiet confidence of undeniable truth. The beautiful thing about mathematics, Mr. Thorne, is it doesn't care who you think deserves to be right. The auditorium fell completely silent. This wasn't just about solving a problem anymore. This was about truth confronting arrogance, merit defeating prejudice, brilliance refusing to be silenced by status. All eyes turned to Alistair Thorne, the man who had built his reputation on mathematical supremacy, who had publicly wagered everything on his unshakable certainty, who had spent the entire evening humiliating the woman who had just proven him devastatingly wrong. For 15 years, Alistair Thorne had never known defeat. For 15 years, he had been the undisputed champion of mathematical competition, his brilliance unquestioned, his arrogance unchallenged. But 15 years of hubris had just met 60 minutes of pure, unadulterated genius. The camera zoomed in on his face as he stared at the whiteboard, understanding finally, brutally, dawning in his eyes. Keisha O'Connell hadn't just solved his impossible problem. She had revolutionized the very mathematical foundation on which his entire technological empire was built. The third golden beat was coming. The moment when arrogance would be forced to acknowledge brilliance, when prejudice would bow to truth, when the impossible would become undeniably real. Would the most arrogant man in America find the courage to admit he had been defeated by the woman he had tried to destroy? The moment stretched like an eternity, the silence punctuated only by the distant hum of the cameras. Thorne stood frozen, staring at a mathematical work that just destroyed 15 years of his carefully constructed supremacy. But before he could speak, Dr. Thorne's tablet chimed with an urgent message that would change everything once more. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Thorne announced, his voice carrying a mix of amazement and a hint of concern. "I've just received an extraordinary communication from the Global Patent and Innovation Alliance." The cameras swiveled toward him as he continued reading, his voice barely concealing his astonishment. Miss O'Connell's solution methodology, it appears, has applications far beyond pure mathematics. Her unified approach to infinity analysis has immediate, groundbreaking implications for quantum computing, artificial intelligence optimization, and cutting-edge cybersecurity protocols. A collective murmur rippled through the auditorium. This wasn't just academic mathematics anymore. This was a tectonic shift in global technology. The preliminary economic impact assessment suggests that companies implementing her mathematical framework could see efficiency improvements of 300 to 500% in computational processing and data encryption. Alistair Thorne's face went ashen, a sickly gray. His entire tech empire, his multi-billion-dollar legacy, was built on algorithms that Keisha's breakthrough had just made utterly obsolete. Furthermore, Dr. Thorne continued, his eyes widening as he scrolled further, the Alliance is requesting immediate, urgent documentation of Miss O'Connell's methodology to prevent unauthorized commercial exploitation. They're estimating the potential intellectual property value at... He paused, double-checking the staggering figure on his screen. $200 billion. The Olympus Hall exploded into pandemonium. Reporters were shouting questions, a frantic melee erupting in the aisles. Camera crews pushed forward, desperate for better angles. The three PhD contestants, their rivalry long forgotten, were frantically photographing the whiteboard before anyone could erase it, preserving every line of Keisha's revolutionary work. But the most stunning revelation was yet to come. Dr. Thorne raised his hand, silencing the chaos with a single, firm gesture. There's one more thing. The International Mathematics Consortium has just informed me that tonight's competition was partially designed as a talent identification initiative. They've been searching for mathematicians capable of breakthrough thinking that transcends traditional computational approaches. They've been looking for someone who doesn't just solve problems, but redefines them. He turned to face Keisha directly, a profound admiration etched on his face. "Miss O'Connell, they are formally inviting you to lead a new, globally funded research institute dedicated to intuitive mathematics, with full funding, unlimited resources, and complete academic autonomy. They want you to build the future of mathematics." The twist hit everyone simultaneously, a wave of profound understanding washing over the audience. This hadn't just been a competition, it had been a meticulously orchestrated recruitment process. And the woman who'd been serving coffee a mere 12 hours ago had just become the most sought-after mathematical mind in the world. But Alistair Thorne still hadn't spoken. The man who'd wagered everything on his mathematical supremacy now faced a choice that would define the rest of his life. Would he honor his public commitment, or would his arrogance find one final, insidious way to avoid the crushing consequences of his cruelty? The silence stretched across Olympus Hall like a held breath. 700 million people around the world waited for Alistair Thorne to speak the words that would complete the most extraordinary reversal in mathematical history. His lawyers were frantically whispering in his ear, probably advising him to find legal loopholes, to claim the competition had been compromised, to save face at all costs. His associates, sensing the irreversible shift in power dynamics, had already begun backing away from him, their faces a mixture of shock and fear. But Thorne was staring at the whiteboard, at the elegant, intricate tapestry of equations and diagrams Keisha O'Connell had woven, a creation that transcended his own understanding, his own rigid computational world. For the first time in his life, he was confronted by mathematical brilliance that undeniably, unequivocally, exceeded his own. The moment arrived for the third and final golden beat. His voice cracked, a dry, fragile sound. He cleared his throat, a deep, rattling cough, and tried again, his eyes still fixed on the board. "I need to verify the calculations myself." The audience held its breath as he slowly, almost mechanically, approached Keisha's work, studying each equation, each connection, each elegant leap of reasoning. Minutes passed in complete, agonizing silence, punctuated only by the whirring of the cameras. Finally, he stepped back from the board. When he turned to face the cameras, the transformation was stark, almost unbelievable. 15 years of mathematical arrogance had been stripped away, replaced by something raw, exposed, and approaching humility. "Miss O'Connell," he said quietly, his voice devoid of its usual bombast. "Your solution is correct. Completely correct. You've solved advanced mathematical proofs that I could not, demonstrating superior mathematical intuition and problem-solving ability that I failed to recognize." The words seemed to physically pain him, each one a shard of glass in his throat, but he continued, his gaze, for the first time, meeting hers directly. "I built my career on being right about mathematics. Today, I learned something more valuable than being right. I learned how to be wrong, with dignity." The Olympus Hall erupted in a thunderous, cathartic applause, a wave of sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. But the most powerful moment was watching Keisha's quiet grace in victory. No gloating, no revenge, no triumphant declaration. Just the serene confidence of someone who had proven, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that brilliance couldn't be silenced by prejudice, by social status, or by the loudest voices in the room. 6 months later, Dr. Keisha O'Connell stood in her new office at the Global Institute for Intuitive Mathematics, a sleek, state-of-the-art facility nestled in the rolling hills outside Geneva. The walls, rather than being adorned with awards or accolades, were covered with vibrant photographs of students from underfunded schools across the globe. Young minds whose nascent mathematical talents she was now helping to discover and nurture. Her desk, a minimalist expanse of polished dark wood, held only a few items. Among them, carefully framed, was Alistair Thorne's soggy napkin, a silent, poignant memento from that transformative night at Olympus Hall. It wasn't a trophy of victory, but a powerful, ever-present reminder that true genius often whispers in the quietest, most overlooked places, patiently waiting for someone to listen. The final shot showed her, radiant and composed, teaching a diverse classroom of eager students. Her marker moved across a massive interactive whiteboard with the same fluid confidence she'd displayed that night, charting new constellations in the vast universe of numbers. Above the board, a simple, profound message, written in elegant script, resonated with every soul who had ever felt underestimated. Mathematics doesn't care about your uniform. It only cares about your courage to see what others cannot. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look or where you work? Share your story in the comments below. Subscribe to Quantum Narratives for more incredible stories of people who defy expectations and prove the doubters wrong. Because genius isn't about where you start. It's about refusing to let anyone else define your limits. Remember, somewhere right now, the next revolutionary idea is forming in a mind that others might overlook. Make sure you're not one of the people doing the overlooking.